Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Larry Walsh weekly town hall meeting. I appreciate all of you joining us tonight. As we've done in the past, we'll adhere to the time limit at 7:30. We want to respect your time, so we will end promptly at 7:30. So anyhow, I want to welcome you all. I hope you all enjoyed the recent spring rains that we've had. It's great for the grass, for the flowers, and for our crops in the field. So I was delighted to see the rain come. I think if it's going to be cloudy though, which it has been for the last couple of days, it's just plain rain. So hopefully we'll get a little more rain before spring ends. Today I got an email from Dave Fulkerson, who's the county individual who's in charge of the COVID-19 response team. And the news was very good. We have only 3 active cases in Douglas County right now. We had a total of 25, so that means 22 have recovered. I want to thank everybody for really adhering to the social distancing requirements and other requirements that or suggestions that have been put out by the state. I'm sure that has been helpful in keeping down our numbers. The 4-county coalition, so to speak, that is handling our COVID-19 responses, Douglas County, Carson City, Story County, and Lyon County. And the numbers, again, were very good today. I think there's only 25 active cases. I forget the exact number in that 4-county region. So we're doing very, very well. Small businesses in Douglas County are starting to reopen. Judy and I have gone to Wadette's a couple of times for breakfast and lunch. Have takeout dinner from the JT restaurant. So it's really good for everyone if they could support the small businesses reopening. I know the retail stores are opening on a limited basis. So if you could all please support these businesses, it's very important to our recovery, our economic recovery out of the COVID-19 crisis. The county offices, I believe, are going to reopen next week. They have the PPE, the personal protection equipment, and screens, I think, in place in all the offices. But check on the website, the county website, so you don't go to an office that's still temporarily closed. This week, Judy and I voted. We dropped off our ballots at the county offices at the historic courthouse. So I would please encourage everyone to remember to exercise your constitutional right and vote, and please vote for me if you can, if you would. I would certainly appreciate the support. We need to protect our county from the invasion, I guess, of certain elitists, mainly from California, who want to impose their lifestyle on our little rural Douglas County. And it's important that we elect the right commissioners. I think candidates Nathan Tolbert and Danny Tarkanian are aligned with me. I don't necessarily think they agree on everything that I'm doing or exactly the same, but they are aligned with my way of thinking. So if you could support those candidates as well, that would be terrific. So let's see what I want to talk about tonight. There was an ad in last week's Record Courier put out by my opponent, wherein he stated that I voted for the approval of 3,800 homes over the last couple of years. And I'd like to respond to that. It's very, very misleading. And I'd like to respond, first of all, by explaining what a private property right is, because I don't think my opponent understands private property rights. In fact, I'm sure of it. A private property right means that you can do with your property what you want, as long as it's within the confines of the county ordinances. So, for example, if you have a zoning designation that says you can build a single-family residence on your property, you can do that. You have to comply with all the county ordinances. You have to make application to do so, and you will get approval, probably subject to a number of conditions that you have to follow. But it's your right to build that home. If you have a zoning designation of neighborhood commercial, for example, then you would be allowed to build commercial enterprises that are allowed within that particular zoning designation. Say, for instance, a dry cleaners or a soda shop or whatever. So that's a private property right. And I want to also explain the difference between the designation under a master plan for your land use versus a zoning designation. In the master plan, for example, there are many different types of land uses, and one of those land uses is a receiving area, for example, or you have a land use designation of agriculture, or if you have a land use designation as public facilities. Those are what the master plan calls land uses. It doesn't mean that you have the zoning to do anything on those land uses. It means that you have to obtain zoning in order to develop that particular property that you own. So, for example, my opponent indicated that I approved 2,500 homes on the Park Ranch development on Buckeye Road in Minden. And that's the furthest thing from the truth. Frankly, what we did under the as a board, we approved a master plan land use designation as a receiving area for about 1,250 acres, I believe, on Mr. Park's property on either side of Buckeye Road. That's a far cry from approving 2,500 houses, which he has voluntarily limited to the number of houses he would build in his receiving area. The actual application for him to build houses is something that's going to come in the future. For example, if he wants to build 2,500 homes or some amount close to that, or even much less than that, he's got to come to, first of all, he's got to submit a planning application for a specific plan. That in the specific plan, it has a lot of information: how you're going to develop the property, what you're going to put on it, the timing of your development, phasing, all those different things that people would want to know, the public would want to know, if you're going to develop your property. And once you've submitted that planning application to the community development department, they have 3 days to accept it. They will either accept or reject, but if they accept it, then the process is that they will review the application, and I think they have, I believe, 30 days to get back to the applicant if there's any deficiencies in the application. But once the applicant has received a approval of acceptance of the application, then it has to go before, in this case, in Mr. Park's case, it has to go before the town of Gardnerville and the town of Minden board meetings. And those are public meetings where people come in and can scrutinize exactly what's going to be built on that property. And then those two towns will make a recommendation to the Planning Commission and to the board. But the Planning Commission will hear it again at a public meeting or meetings. And then they'll make the recommendation to the board as to whether or not to accept the plan. And then finally, the board, at least probably two public meetings, will discuss the application and its merits or non-merits, and then make a decision whether or not to accept that master plan, or excuse me, that specific plan. So you have at least five public meetings where the public is going to have the right for them to make their input on the plan. So when my opponent said that I approved 2,500 homes, you can see that before one house is approved, it has to go to at least 5 public meetings. So that statement about me approving 2,500 homes out of the 3,800 is completely false. The other one of the other projects that my opponent said I approved was the Sierra Ranchos project in the south end of Tillman Lane in the Ranchos, and I did approve that. It originally came to the board, I think, last year, and the applicant wanted to build 350 homes. The board denied that 5-0 because the project was too dense. And I talked to the developer. I'm sure other commissioners talked to the developer and said, "Listen, you really have to redo this project so it conforms to the surrounding neighborhood in the southwest portion of the Ranchos." But in this particular case, the applicant had the correct zoning designation. He had zoning designation for single-family 8,000 square foot lots, which would have enabled him, I think, to put in at least 300 lots. He came back with a plan that showed 239 lots, I believe, and it was a good plan, and it had it met all the requirements that were put on by the Community Development Department, by the Planning Department. And so after a long discussion at the board meeting, I approved that particular project because I thought it was good for the Ranchos. They had received all the approvals. They had, I think, a 6-1 vote from the Ranchos General Improvement District Board. They had I think a 6-1 vote from the Planning Commission. So I was happy to approve it, and I think it'll be a good project. It will take somewhere over, the developer is planning that there'll be any number of phases, I think, to be built over a 12-year period. So for my opponent to come out and say I approved 239 homes seems like they're going to build 239 homes tomorrow, when in fact they're going to be building maybe 239 homes over a 12 or more year period. So that's another thing that I took objection to in his advertisement. And of course, I think one of the other projects was the Valley Knolls project up in North County, off of Topsy Lane and Highway 395. And the Valley Knolls project was actually part of a specific plan. I explained before what a specific plan is. And the specific plan is called the North County Specific Plan. I think that's what it's called. North Douglas County Specific Plan. And it consisted of 3 properties, the Big George property, the Valley Knolls property, I forget the name of the developer right now, and the Michael Hull piece, which is the piece that fronts Highway 395. And the specific plan actually had designated more units to be built at Valley Knolls than we approved. Again, this is a property right that the property owner had, and to deny it, to deny any kind of application where it's demonstrated that the developer has or the property owner has the correct land use designation and the zoning designation, didn't have the zoning designation, but he had a specific plan. And to deny that probably would have led to a lawsuit against Douglas County, which, you know, if you're a betting man, you would say that the county would not prevail in that lawsuit, and the developer would, because he had a private property right, the specific plan. So I'd just like to make that point to folks that private property rights are really sacred. I mean, they're you know, the specific plan, the land use designation under the master plan, we're just trying to get better projects for Douglas County located in the correct location. So,
hey Larry,
yes, ma'am.
before you move on, we kind of forgot to lay down the ground rules for tonight. And just let people know that we're taking questions and that sort of thing. Can we take a minute just to introduce people to what we're doing tonight?
Sure. I mean, obviously,
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh no, you go ahead.
I was just going to say that as in the past town hall meetings, I'm going to be going over certain things that I think are important for everyone to hear from me. But you can actually, as you're watching the town hall meeting tonight, you can go into the chat room. If you look at the bottom of your screen, there's a thing that says chat, and you can actually ask questions of me during the meeting. So I would encourage you to do that if you have questions or something is unclear.
Perfect. And we did get a question in the chat. There was a question about wanting to get your views on the agrihood concept that Park Ranch has come up with. And they want to get your views on that and maybe share some information on it.
I'd be happy to do that. Mr. Park was familiar with the term agrihoods when I approached him with the subject about a year ago. And I'd asked him if he had ever considered developing any portion of his property into an agrihood. And I hadn't talked to him for a long time, and then lo and behold, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, he had a full-page ad in the Record Courier that kind of laid out his concept for what he calls Buckeye Farm, and it's an agrihood community. And I'd like to read the definition, and you'll be able to find this on my website either tonight or tomorrow. But this is a Wikipedia definition of an agrihood. It says an agrihood is an organized community that integrates agriculture into a residential neighborhood. The purpose of these communities is to facilitate food production while at the same time providing recreation for members of the community. The trend of moving to agrihoods has been noted by a number of sources to be more common among millennials. So I found that very interesting. And I think the Buckeye Farm agrihood concept put out by Mr. Park is a good example of good land planning, especially here in the Carson Valley, where we not only want to protect land and protect water, but we want to conserve land as well. And this agrihood concept that Mr. Park has put out does all of that. He has about 1,250 acres of land in a receiving area on Buckeye Road, both north and south of Buckeye Road. Now, again, the receiving area is a master plan land use designation, and the master plan uses receiving areas to promote growth in certain places in the future. For example, if you have a receiving area, which Mr. Park does, um, you have the right to develop that in the future based on certain parameters that you have to meet. And you have to submit a specific plan as to what you want to develop on your property. And frankly, an agri-hood is a specific plan. Um, under his plan, first of all, if he decides to build houses in his agri-hood plan, and he has voluntarily capped that at 2,500 units, which is great because in the receiving area, if you have a receiving area designation, under the master plan, you're allowed 16 units to build 16 units per acre. 1,250 acres receiving area on Buckeye Road would equate to maybe 16,500 homes that could possibly be built there. But Mr. Park has capped that number at 2,500. So he will submit a plan eventually. I mean, the plan that he's put into the newspaper, which will be on my website tomorrow. That plan will be much more detailed. But in a receiving area, if you want to develop one house in that receiving area, if you want to build one house, you have to buy what we call a development right from a sending area. And all sending areas in Douglas County, not all sending, but sending areas in Douglas County is almost all of the ranch lands in the county. So, for example, most ranch lands allow, or most ranch lands have what they call A19 zoning. A19 means agriculture, 19 acres, meaning that you can develop. The ranchers have a right to develop one house for every 19 acres of land that they own. That would not be good for the septics here in the valley, but that's their right to do that. But if a developer who owns a receiving area wants to buy that development right from the rancher, he has to negotiate with the rancher a price for that development right. So if he has, let's say 100, we'll give you an example, 100 homes, and you as a developer would need to buy 100 development rights in order to build those 100 homes in your receiving area. So you would negotiate with a rancher a price for a development right. And then you would pay the rancher a certain amount of money. Let's say that the development rights were worth $1,000, and you negotiate that amount. You would have to pay the rancher $100,000 for the right to build 100 homes in your receiving area. The good thing, what this does is, number one, it gives the rancher $100,000 that he would have never had before. And that allows him to sustain his ranching lifestyle on his ranch well into the future. Each development right is tied to a 19-acre parcel or portion thereof. So he would have to then place a conservation easement on whatever development rights he sold you. So let's say it's 100 and let's see, 19 acres, 100. So we had 1,900 acres. So theoretically, 1,900 acres of land could be conserved in the Carson Valley on that particular ranch. So you've done two things now. You've conserved land, and you've given the rancher money to sustain his ranch well into the future, and that's a good thing. And the good thing about the conservation easement is that it ties all the water rights to whatever land is conserved to that property, so he can never transfer the water rights on that property. Very important thing in Douglas County. And of course, the other thing is then now the developer has the right to build 100 homes in his receiving area. So uh, I think the concept of a receiving area mixed with the concept of an agri-hood is excellent. Um, the other thing about this particular receiving area is that it's kind of an infill project where the land on Buckeye Road is surrounded by existing uh, multifamily, single-family uses, commercial uses, retail uses, public facilities, and industrial uses. So it's surrounded by those existing uses, or has zoning already approved for those types of uses. So this is the perfect infill project, as is a goal under the master plan, to develop in areas where it's considered infill. The project will also be connected to municipal water and sewer, very important for the protection of our aquifer. There'll be no septic systems anywhere in this agri-hood. The project on Buckeye Road is close to both the towns of Minden and Gardnerville. In fact, it'll be able to connect through portals into both those towns, so it'll be walkable. It's close to existing commercial and retail services, medical services, and it's very close to maybe a quarter mile away from the valley's largest non-gaming employer out on Orchard Road. So there's a lot of benefits to this particular receiving area. And of course, as we all know, Muller Parkway will be built on the eastern edge of this agri-hood. And according to the information put out by Mr. Park, they will preserve 500 acres of that receiving area as open space, community areas, recreation, for farming, agri-hoods. Agri-hoods promote the farm to table concept, so that people can actually farm on community farm parcels, or there can be commercial operations where within the community, I don't know exactly how it works, but I'm sure there's some kind of an association that would own the open space land and promote farm to table activities. The open space land in this case could also be bike paths and equestrian uses and other outdoor activities. So I don't know what the lot sizes would be, but I'm sure they would be smaller lot sizes than a lot of people enjoy here in the Valley. Although there are some, I think maybe 5,000 square foot or 6,000 square foot lots, but we already have existing very nice communities that have a lot smaller than that. So even though it's a small lot, and like Wikipedia says, it's attractive to millennials, and as our clean air industrial base expands here in the Carson Valley, and that's one of my goals, is to bring in clean air businesses into the Valley. As they expand, those companies are going to need, whether it's a new company or expanding company, they're going to need professional employees. And those professional employees, those millennials, those younger people, will come and for these jobs and live in this agri-hood. I think that's just going to be an absolutely marvelous thing for the county. Hope that answers that question.
I think so. I think it did.
Okay.
I know you had some other updates that you wanted to go through. I just wanted to get that question going and let people know that they can ask.
Okay. Sure. I just wanted to go over one more time. I mentioned just previously that Muller Parkway is going to be constructed along the eastern edge of the agri-hood that is being proposed by Park. Now, the funds for Muller Parkway, and the board has previously accepted the transportation plan, which is now part of the master plan. I think it was accepted in 2019 or late 2018. And we agreed that traffic on Highway 395 is considerable. It's built up over the years. I don't think very much from the growth we've incurred, the residential growth we've incurred here in Douglas County. I mean, the 10-year period from 2008 to 2018, we grew a total population of 1,600, which is 160 people per year. So that has definitely added to the traffic on Highway 395. But I think the two biggest causes for increase in traffic on Highway 395 are, we had up until COVID-19, we had the greatest economy I think our country has seen. And what that has done is it allows more people to travel. And if you travel up and down Highway 395 through the towns, like I do every day, you can see exponentially the number of out-of-state license plates that are growing. Highway 395 is a great corridor north and south for people coming from, Arizona, or Southern California, or wherever, and going up to, the beautiful national parks that we have in the Northwest and up into Canada. Highway 395 is a natural route, so you see a lot more traffic on Highway 395 from those travelers. And the other thing that really has caused an increase in traffic on 395 is the truck traffic. When Governor Sandoval was our governor for 8 years, when he took office, he had a very, very aggressive economic development plan for Northern Nevada. And you know what? It worked. There have been big expansions in Reno and Stead and Sparks. And of course, we have the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center out east of Sparks, which has big distribution companies and manufacturing companies. So those manufacturing and distribution companies, they need a way to get their product to one of the biggest markets in the country, which is Southern California. So traveling straight down Highway 395 is the most direct route from these new industrial companies up in the Washoe County and northern Lyon County. So we've seen a tremendous increase in truck traffic on Highway 395. And of course, also we have the plans for prosperity, which have been promoted by the towns in which we've accepted as a board. They're talking about a more walkable community, and a lot of people are walking in Minden and Gardnerville. And as you all know, there are a lot of crosswalks, pedestrian crosswalks in these two towns. And so traffic has to stop for those people. So that has caused a tremendous increase in traffic. And that's the reason why we need to construct Muller Parkway, and we need to construct it by 2026. In order to make sure that the level of service, the traffic level of service remains a C, which is acceptable through the towns of Minden and Gardnerville. It's the Muller Parkway alternate route is not a truck traffic route. It's designated to handle local traffic coming from the ranchos and then from the East Valley and the towns, so they can circumvent the towns and go to their work centers or wherever they're going north without, and alleviate traffic through the town. So I think it's important to understand that we really want to build this parkway by 2026, because I've not heard any alternative to taking care of the traffic on Highway 395. And we need to do this because when it comes time for it, and they figured by they meaning the traffic engineers have figured by the year 2026, we'll have gridlock on Highway 395 if we don't do something. So I don't want to be around in 2026 when people start screaming and yelling that we have gridlock on Highway 395. So we really need to build this project. And Mr. Park had offered the right-of-way for the Muller Parkway alternate route through his property back. I think they had an agreement dating back to 2004 or 7. I forget exactly when it was, but he offered the right-of-way through his property in exchange for no development rights, and that was huge. Now, both the county, well, at least the county didn't meet under the existing development agreement back in 2018. The county had not met the thresholds by building at least 2 lanes by a certain date. So the county and Park wanted to amend that development agreement. And again, the development agreement said, excuse me, we Park does not do not want to garner any development rights from this agreement. We just want you to build it by a certain date. So the proposal was to amend that original agreement to change the threshold dates as to when the parties would build the first 2 lanes through Mr. Park's property. He had already deeded that right away to the county. And in 2018, I think it was December, this development agreement came to the board for their approval. And there was quite a spirited discussion about the contents of the amendment. And but Commissioner Thaler and myself voted to approve that amendment because we were getting the development, the parkway right away for no development rights. Well, Commissioner Nelson was the deciding vote. He made a motion to deny approval of the development agreement. Even though he made the motion, he could have voted yay, and we would have had the Muller Parkway alignment for no development rights. Well, he voted no, and there went the county's ability to get the right of way for no development agreements. So in 2019, the county went back to Park Ranch Holdings and negotiated a new development agreement, which has a tremendous amount of benefits to Douglas County. It gives the right of way for the Muller Parkway through the ranch, the Park Ranch. It changed the alignment of the proposed Muller Parkway to the benefit of the county. The county was originally going to have to move a lot of irrigation structures or whatever. They don't have to do that now. It gave the county an additional 100-foot right of way for storm detention facilities right adjacent to the eastern portion of the Muller Parkway alignment. So you would have Muller Parkway, and then you would have the 100-foot right of way for the detention facilities, and then the end of the park property. So that was a really good thing. Park also offered to transfer the development rights from their Claver Ranch property on Muller Lane in North Minden. And that's a very sensitive area. It's the Claver Ranch was located in a very sensitive flood zone. And at one time they wanted to develop that property. It was denied. But now they're transferring those development rights. So there'll be a conservation easement on that property, and nobody will be able to build on that property. I think there's 4 development rights on that 100-and-something acre ranch, but it's along the Carson River, and it really helps to protect and preserve the Carson River channel going through their property. In addition to that, Mr. Park offered almost a 2-mile right-of-way along his property on the south side of Muller Lane, from Highway 395, almost all the way to the River Ranch, the Nature Conservancy project in Mid Valley. So at some point in time, there could be a trail leading from Minden all the way to the Nature Conservancy, which is, I think, a great benefit for the people of Douglas County. And finally, I think Mr. Park also offered a construction easement on his property on Highway 88 so that the county could build a new culvert, irrigation culvert under the highway that will that has a tendency to flood every now and again. And the people in Macland subdivision have to carry flood insurance. So this new culvert that the county will build will eliminate the need for flood insurance on those homeowners. And the county has already obtained a $1.5 million grant from NDOT, the Nevada Department of Transportation, to build this culvert under the highway. So all in all, that's a tremendous benefit to the county. And all these benefits were contained in the new park development agreement, which will definitely benefit the county in many, many different ways and for a long time to come. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Hey, we had a question come up to talk a little bit more about some of the misinformation going around about RDA2 in the event center, what the casinos have and haven't contributed to it, and what, if any, other alternatives have even been broached for revitalizing the lake area.
Well, that is a complicated question.
And just so you know, this may possibly be the last big one. It's about 7/12.
Okay. Well, back in 1999, I believe, the state realized that the state line area in Douglas County had declining gaming revenues, and thus their assessed value was declining. And of course, that was that portion of the county contributes about 40% to our general fund revenue through property taxes. So they created what they called the Tahoe Douglas Business Authority. And of course, I think we all know that tourism in Douglas County amounts to about 32% of the people who are engaged in our workforce. They're connected somehow to the tourism industry. So tourism is a major source of tax revenue to the county, whether it's through the TOT tax, the room tax that they generate, or whether it's through filling what they call heads and beds in the hotel casino properties up there, which obviously impacts their assessed value. So then we, after that we had the Great Recession starting in 2008, and over the next 10-year period, the county lost about $1 million a year in property tax revenue coming from just from the state line corridor. And we needed to find a way to not only save that, but to bolster it, because we all know Lake Tahoe is one of the top 10 tourist destinations in the world. People love Lake Tahoe. It's beautiful. It's scenic. It offers many opportunities for outdoor recreation. And with the gaming industry transitioning out from gaming as that was once the mainstay in Douglas County, even in Nevada, because of people have changed their ways that they recreate. So the Lake Tahoe area needed to find a transition from a gaming economy to a recreation entertainment economy that but the families now want in their lives. So California had a redevelopment agency in South Lake Tahoe, and we've seen the benefits of that, the Heavenly Village and all the new shops that have gone up there, and has increased their assessed value tremendously, obviously, and that has a positive impact on the tax revenue. They had planned an event center south of Harvey's and or west. I always forget my directions there, but because Jerry Brown disbanded all the redevelopment agencies in California, that project kind of went by the wayside. So in 2009, the TDVA, the Tahoe Douglas Visitors Authority, took the bull by the horns and started planning for an event center up in Tahoe. And the idea is that the event center would attract conventions, would attract entertainment venues, concerts, and those types of things, and it would attract even sporting events. And the one that the event center that has been designed is a 6,500 seat facility. We could host basketball games there, hockey games, conventions, and of course concerts. It won't interfere with the Harvey's outdoor concerts in the summer, but the concerts would be during the shoulder seasons of spring and fall, where in the past those seasons have not attracted many visitors or as many visitors to the South Lake area as are attracted in the winter ski season and the summer boating outdoor recreation season. So the event center was to handle those shoulder seasons, not handle them, but have a positive impact on those shoulder seasons and put more beds in, heads in beds and increase the room revenue for the hotel casinos. Those properties would eventually then have their assessed values increase, and that would bolster property taxes. But in addition to that, the TOT, the transit occupancy tax, or better known as the room tax, generates millions of dollars each year in room tax revenue, and that provides services to our community, or provides funding to our community services department, which is social services and parks and recs and the community centers up at the lake and down here. So that revenue would be sorely impacted if we didn't do something up there. And so the event center, which we approved on a 3-2 vote, will definitely bolster those two revenue sources, as well as the third revenue source. We can't forget about this. This is the consolidated tax, which is tax that is collected by the state, but remitted back to the county, and it includes sales tax and live entertainment tax and liquor and tobacco tax, whatever. And it's a good portion of our general fund revenue as well. So all of these revenue sources would be enhanced by the event center, and there was no alternative that I heard that would promote these types of increases in those taxes. So the event center, the RDA continues. The event center, my understanding is that they're going to start construction sometime this summer, probably just build the infrastructure for the event center, because we're still going to be in the recovery, we'll still be emerging from the COVID-19. So regardless of what we do, the room tax revenue and the sales tax revenue won't be as high as it was in the past until we recover fully, which should be by the end of this year, or at least the beginning of the next fiscal year, which is July 1, 2021. So I think, and the event center will take about 2.5 years to build. I think it'll become right online when we're fully recovered. I'm very optimistic that it'll continue to generate, it will generate more taxes than it was before, coming from the state line corridor. And of course, once RDA 2 is dissolved, let me go back just one step. RDA 2, the redevelopment agency, has pledged $1.3 million of its tax increment every year to help repay, I think it's about 19% of the cost of the event center. That was a requirement of the TDVA's bond council that the county participate in, and we did that. Those bonds could be paid off earlier, depending on the room tax revenue. The RDA could be disbanded or dissolved early. That's up to the county commission at the time. But there are other benefits that the RDA could provide to the county from their tax increment. And that would be, the Child Douglas Fire District. They've been wanting a firehouse in State Line, and the RDA could provide that. And there are other improvements too to the Cale Community Center and to some of the roads up in the RDA district. So it'll be up to the county commission at the time whether or not they want to provide that tax increment to build those facilities. So hopefully that answered that question.
I think so. Before we kind of go into our usual wrap up of the evening, you had mentioned that you voted this week, and I know that there's been some concerns about going to a strictly mail-in ballot. But I'd really like to hear about your experience. I think you didn't actually mail yours in; you took it down to the courthouse.
Correct.
And so I'd love for you to just talk about voting in general for this primary and what this means to your race.
Well, I think it's very important. I understand about 15 or 18% maybe of people have mailed in their ballots. I'm kind of one of these tactile persons. I like to put hands on things. And I always enjoy going to the voting booth to exercise my constitutional right. And of course, we can't do that this year, so it was fun just to go down to the old courthouse in Minden. They've set up a big tent on the north side of the courthouse, and there's somebody always there during the day, and people can drop off their ballots there rather than mailing them. That will save the county a few cents, I think, on the bulk mailing cost. But anyhow, it was just fun to do that and get out, and they have it very well set up. And when I got there, we got there, there was already a bunch of ballots that had been cast that day. So it was exciting, and I would encourage everybody to do that. Get out and have some fun, and get down to the courthouse and hand in your ballot.
And so as we're heading into, the end of the primary here, what does that mean for you moving forward after the primary? What happens next for you?
Well, for me, when I prevail in the primary, I have an opponent who's running as an independent. He happens to be living in my neighborhood. So I will be on the general election ballot in November, and he will be my opponent. It means that I will need to continue my campaign. I think I'll tone it down up until about say October or late September. Hopefully take some of down those big highway signs that frankly I think are, never mind, I won't give you my ideas on those signs, but anyhow, I appreciate everybody who's put up yard signs. They can continue to do that if they wish, or take them down and put them back up in September. But it will be a race that I'll have to win at the general election, along with Donald Trump.
I like it. So we have just a few more minutes. Do you want to go ahead and do your wrap up for the evening? Was there anything else you wanted to talk about that we have 5 minutes left to talk about, or what would you like to do here, Larry?
Well, actually, I do have one other topic. I keep a close tabs on the number of building permits that are issued each year. I think over the last 10 years, we have averaged issuing 130 building permits per year. The highest in recent memory was, I think, 2017. I think we issued maybe 200 and something building permits, but last year we issued 100 and I want to say 100 and last calendar year we issued 140 building permits. That's single family building permits. And this year, this fiscal year, which started July 1, 2019 and ends June 30th of this year, the first 9 months of this fiscal year, we've issued 140 single family building permits, which is exactly the same number that we issued at this time last fiscal year. But my issue that concerns me the most is out of that 140, 43 of those permits are going to be on septic systems. So people moving here, they might want to move out on the ranch lands, and that's their prerogative if a rancher wants to sell a 19-acre parcel. But to me, that's not smart growth. Septic systems impact the quality of our aquifer, and I would discourage people from doing that in the future. We want smart growth. We don't want any more than we need. New septic systems in Douglas County. Smart growth would be that the agri-hood that I talked about earlier, where any new homes would be hooked up to municipal sewer and water services. So anyhow, I was surprised. That's almost a third of the new homes that are being built in Douglas County are on septic systems. I would hope that we can discourage that in the future. So with that, I'll just kind of wrap it up. This Thursday we have a board meeting via Zoom, starting at 1 o'clock, a Board of County Commissioners meeting. We're going to be talking about the application for the BUILD grant. That's the federal grant that we're requesting, I believe, $18 million grant from the federal government to help with the construction of the first or phase 2 of Muller Parkway. Phase 1 has already been built in the north and south ends, but phase 2 would be the 2-lane portion of the Muller Parkway, and then phase 3 at some time in the future would be the completion of the four lanes. So we'll be talking about that application that was submitted, I think, day before yesterday. We will be talking about this coming fiscal year's county budget. My understanding is that we're very close to submitting a balanced budget. We've been conservative in our revenue estimates. I think we've estimated almost a $7 million reduction in the room tax revenue, and fortunately our property tax revenue should go up slightly. We've asked the departments throughout the county to cut where they can, and they have. So we should have a balanced budget. We'll end this fiscal year with hopefully about a $4 million surplus, which will help. So going into next fiscal year, we should be in pretty good shape. So with that, I want to thank everybody for joining me tonight. Tune in next week. I believe our meeting is going to be on Wednesday of next week. I wish everybody Godspeed, stay well, pray for rain a little bit and sunshine, and get out and visit our local businesses in town and restaurants in town, and help support them as they recover from this COVID-19 crisis. So good night, everybody. I appreciate it. Again, stay well and healthy, and don't forget to social distance until we get other directions from Governor Sisolak. So good night.